What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Loop Live. My name's Matt McCoy. I'm the founder of loopcommunity.com. And today I've got a very special interview. I've got Michael W. Smith with me, songwriter, worship leader, artist. You for sure have heard of his music if you're involved in church music at all. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation with him. So what are we waiting for? Let's just go ahead and bring in Michael W. Smith. Hey, Michael.
Man, how's it going? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Are you coming to us from Tennessee, or where in the world are you?
I actually am. I've been all around the world, but I've landed the plane, no pun intended, and I'm actually here at my home, Franklin, Tennessee.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining.
You're
You
welcome.
have had a huge impact on so many worship leaders and songwriters, and I was actually thinking before this interview, I was thinking about how I first heard of you. And I remember my parents were pastors of a vineyard church in Southern California, in San
Yeah.
Diego. And I remember my mom getting a tape and playing it in a car, like a tape cassette, and it had Friends on it. And
Okay.
I remember that was the first song I ever heard from you. And then I remember Place in This World, which actually still goes down as like one of my all-time favorite songs. And your live performance of it at the Doves, I think, is so good. Um,
Thank
and
you.
then of course the Worship Forever albums. My wife was telling me that when she was a kid, her favorite song when she was like 6 years old, 7 years old, was Prince of Peace from the
Oh,
Worship
yeah,
album.
yeah. I remember that
And
one as well.
yeah, and I just played it recently for my kids, just because I thought they would love it. So, anyways, thank you for what you have done for so many years to impact churches and worship leaders, and I mean, music, all types of music, really. So, I'm curious if you could just tell us the story of how you started leading worship. Like, who taught you? Who inspired you? Who got you going into even doing church music?
Yeah, well, it was really after I moved to Nashville in '78, and um, I started going to Belmont Church, and uh, it was such a vibrant place right on Music Road. Don Finto's the pastor, who's actually 93 years old, still alive, and has mentored me for 40 years. And
Wow.
um, but I was just so moved by what was going on worship-wise back in the '80s, and
Yeah.
I got asked to play piano one day, and I just kind of thought, "Gosh, I think this is part of my calling," you know. And then at some point, I guess within the year, I just started leading worship. So had some mentors, obviously there at Belmont. It's so interesting because that first worship album that came out, what I call, well, I have a whole different analysis of worship, because I think it's a lifestyle, and we all sort of equate
Yeah.
it to Sunday mornings and music, and it's so much bigger than that. But that first vertical record, Worship, which came out on actually 9/11 in 2001, the day we got attacked. I was leading worship for 19 years before that record ever came out.
Wow.
So, but I just learned a lot from the worship leaders at Belmont, and then
Yeah.
just knew the calling on my life. And
Yeah.
there's nothing quite better, especially when you get to do it around the world and just really see the
Yeah.
atmosphere shift, things happen. So
Yeah, and I guess it's interesting because when I think about my question, it was we are talking, I guess, about you are involved in music, and you've got these worship albums, which are like kind of these church songs. But then you also have CCM music, like I was referencing, like the Friends and Place in This World, Go West, or not Go West, but like the really early ones, and
right, all the pop stuff. So
all the pop stuff. Is that what you call it? Okay.
yeah.
Um, and what made you want to, when you were thinking about doing the Worship Forever album, what was it that made you want to do that? Because you were coming out from a lot of pop music at that point.
Well, it really was. Honestly, it's a long story. I'll give you the short story. It happened because of what happened when we were having Gospel Music Week, which used to be a big thing in Nashville. Everybody would come from around the world, and we would all meet in downtown Nashville,
Yeah.
and hobnob, and everybody's doing their thing. And I kind of, and I there was at some point it started to feel a little uncomfortable. Like, why are we doing this? It seemed to be a lot of ego and who's selling the most records, and so at some point. Um, it was actually the spring of 2001. Somebody came to me and said, "Hey, felt the same way that I felt,
Yeah.
and asked if I would consider maybe starting off Gospel Music Week with a worship service at the Rodman Auditorium, and maybe that would help us sort of anchor the week and kind of sort of would just help us get out of this whatever this funk that we're in terms of pride and all that. So whatever. It's a long story, but whatever.
Yeah.
And it was a good idea. I said, if I could just have some creative control, I
Yeah.
don't want to write, but I want to invite every artist I want every artist to be in the choir,
Yeah.
and everybody drop your ego at the door, and we're all going to come and we're going to lead people in worship. And so we did, and it was a top five for me. Something happened. You kind of felt like Jesus was coming back that night. It was just the roof came off of the place, and I thought, my goodness, this is unbelievable. And I do really
Yeah.
think that set the pace for the week, and I think things shifted. Well,
Yeah.
another long story short, and I'll make it quick, is that 3 weeks later, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I just heard the Lord say, "For such a time as this,"
Hmm.
and I said no. And I knew what he was telling me, and I don't know what I was afraid of. Maybe I was afraid what people would think. Oh, Smitty's going to jump on the worship movement thing because it was starting to happen.
Yeah.
With Hillsong, I think it had a record. Maybe uh, the Passion out of Atlanta might have done one thing, but I didn't even really know much about those records. But whatever. It took 3 times. I was woken up every 3 weeks, and that third time when I woke up, it was pretty loud, and I just said, "Okay, God, I'll do it." And
Yeah.
that such a time as this, Glenn, I want you to go make what you did at the Ryman. I want you to go make that record. And
Yeah.
so a bunch of artists, we all went to Lakeland, Florida, and we made this record called Worship,
Yeah.
and recorded it in the summer of 2001. And as I said earlier, it was really released on 9/11. I thought it would be the least successful record of my career, and I didn't really care because I felt like this was an obedience thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's the biggest record I've ever done.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's so special. It's so special. So you've been in this for a long time. How have you seen worship music change over the years? And a second part of that question is like, is there anything you wish that we would get back to, or anything you think that we've kind of lost as it's changed?
well, I mean, I think things have gotten better, and I think we got issues too. I mean,
Yeah.
if I could go back and tell myself something, I would just say, it's not about you.
Yeah.
And I got some concerns about the performance aspect of worship, and
Yeah.
we're rattled and dazzled by lights, and I mean, I get that, and I think there's a healthy balance of all of that. Um, I think we need more vertical songs. I mean, Debbie and I my wife and I were talking about this. What it said: sing psalms to one another and encourage one another. And I get that. But we need more songs that declaring who He is. You
Yeah.
know, I think there's maybe a lack of that. But hey, I'm not passing judgment. When I say these things and my concerns, I mean, I automatically just point them back towards me because I can always do better. But yeah, I just think that we just got to be careful, and we just got to make sure that we've got a tribe, and we got people we're walking with, because we're seeing people fall. We're seeing people kind of fall off the cliff, and
Yeah.
it's sad. And I just don't. Uh, that's not my destiny, and I'm by the grace of
Yeah.
God, I'm going to teach well. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you could go back, let's just say you're sitting over coffee with like a young worship leader who's just getting started. They're 18 years old, 16, maybe even younger. Go back and tell a younger version of yourself or a young worship leader, like, what's just some advice for the road ahead? What would you say? And I think you kind of already hinted to it a little bit there.
well, I would say it's not about you.
Yeah.
That'd probably be the first thing I'd say.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just I mean, I think you're either gifted to do it or you're not. And
Mm,
unfortunately, there's some people probably leading worship that probably don't need to be, but you have compassion on those people because they probably have a very pure heart, and it's
Yeah.
okay. And
Yeah.
um, but and obviously songs are important, and because your job is, well, first of all, I'm trying to kind of gather all my thoughts on this. Is that he's looking for people that are humble.
Yeah.
If you're not humble, he's not. You're destined to fall. And
Hmm.
humility. I always say, every time I lead worship or even do a concert, God, let my posture be beautiful. Let me just be clothed in humility. And if there's any rock star thing coming at me, let me diffuse it.
Hmm.
So what your posture does, you're either up there being a rock star or you're sort of deflecting the glory. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, and then just lead with great humility, I guess. I mean, I could probably talk about this for a long, long time, but there's a lot of little nuggets that I think um, are good. I think a worship leader's main objective is change the atmosphere where God can meet people. That's your
Mm.
job. You change the atmosphere. You usher in these, hopefully singing these songs that just sort of, ooh, the darkness flees, and all of a sudden it makes this pathway to where people can really hear from God.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably many things I could say. But that's probably the main thing I would say is this.
Yeah.
Let's see the atmosphere shift.
What would you say your focus is right now? Like when you're in music and when you sit down to write a song, are you thinking worship or are you thinking kind of like the CCM pop world? I'm thinking about like just it's amazing to me the broad spectrum of music you've covered with like Go West Young Man all the way to like Worship Forever and like the latest um, Worship Again album. Like where are you at right now typically?
You know what? I'm not really sure where I'm at. I mean, when I say that, I never know what I'm going to write, and I've never. Um, I mean, I've been intentional about certain projects like a Christmas record or an instrumental record, but I, every time I sit down to try to write something that's worship or pop, or I'm going to write this, it's a disaster. At least for me, I'm wired different. Like today, I just got my piano tuned in my great room, and I was writing what I thought were these beautiful cinematic pieces of music. You know,
Yeah.
and so I never know what's going to come out. I got a
Yeah.
little pop little thing here, and all of a sudden I got this cinematic thing. It sounds like it should be in a movie, or I was writing something with Tony Wood the other day, just going, "Oh my gosh, I think there's something here in terms
Yeah.
of worship." So,
Yeah.
so I think it's just I've been doing it for so long. I don't feel like I have anything to prove. I don't need another award. I don't need another song on the radio. I
Yeah.
just want. I always feel like this when I play I think of the movie. I remember when I saw the movie Cherry Sapphire and Eric Liddell, and when he said, and I'll never forget it when I was sitting in the theater, and he said, "When I run, I feel His pleasure," and
Mm.
I broke down in the theater because I thought, when I put my hands on the piano, I feel His pleasure.
Mm. Wow. Yeah,
So
that's amazing.
sometimes some of this music, maybe it doesn't need to be on a global scale. Maybe these little melodies that I write are just I'm just playing for the King.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, my last question for you, and this is more of just my own guilty pleasure. This is for me. This isn't for
Oh,
any of the listeners. I'm curious. Tell me the story behind Place in This World. Can we go back
uh,
that far?
it was probably a lot of there were a lot back in the day. We were reading letters, and I had a girl that was working for me and would read all these letters I got, and especially for some reason, young girls and they're suicidal and they're abused and it's sad stuff, man. Really,
Yeah.
and a lot of those letters inspired a lot of my songs.
Hmm.
But I think there was one letter I got where a girl was she had been abused. She was contemplating suicide, and she just said, "Man, Michael said, I'm just trying to find my place in this world." I think she actually
Hmm.
said that.
Wow.
And So and I remember that, but I didn't write the melody till I actually really didn't even think about that line until I, in my basement here, actually here at this house, I went down and wrote that piece of music in about 5 minutes.
Wow.
I remember thinking, going, gosh, I think there's something here. And immediately, right when I wrote the melody, I kept thinking, oh my goodness, maybe should be called Place in This World.
Hmm. Wow.
I went to Wayne Kirkpatrick and Amy Grant, and we started to
Yeah.
talk about these letters, and they started
Yeah.
to craft the lyric, and I'm still singing it. It's still one of my favorite things I've ever written. So
Yeah. I was gonna ask if you still play it live. Like, do you have to?
play.
Is that a song you would play every night? Like whenever you go out?
Yeah, there was a phase where I didn't do it, maybe on a couple, maybe where we were just kind of mainly on the vertical stuff. But this world tour that I did, I played it every night.
Yeah.
I played Friends every night, and
Yeah.
um, yeah, and you look in the audience and you can just kind of see people's faces of
Yeah.
the song was a part of the fabric of their life. I don't know their story, but
Yeah.
hopefully that song had some sort of redemptive place in their life, but
Yeah.
it's an important song, I think, and that's why I'm still singing it.
Yeah.
It's high. My dad would say, son, why do you write this song so high? It
Yeah.
sound good up there, Dad. Now I wish I would have listened to him because that's pretty wide range,
Yeah.
it gets up there once it modulates, but
Yeah.
I've learned how to kind of use my diaphragm and be able to pull it off every night.
It is high. And sometimes
Yeah.
the melody can, like when I've tried to play it too, sometimes the melody can be hard to like it almost feels like it's changing keys like as you're singing it. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but um it's an amazing song. It's one that I come back to actually probably every couple of years in my life that has
Uh,
just impacted me. And like I said earlier, I love the Dove performance that you did of that one. I don't even know what year that was. It had to have been early 90s.
I don't either. Yeah, because it was I think that was on the Go West Young Man record. So that record was released 33 years ago.
Wow.
So
Wow.
and then it became a hit. I guess it was probably 91 that it kind of
Yeah.
hit the top chart. So
Yeah.
yeah, crazy stuff.
Well, I also love all the orchestral work you've been doing, like with the worship album that you did recently. Um,
Yeah,
just beautiful, gorgeous. So,
thank you.
Michael, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to even do this
Well,
interview, and just for these songs that you've given churches and the recordings that you've given churches. It's just powerful. So, I'm
thank
really
you.
thankful for. I'm thankful for you just keep going, like the longevity that you've put into it.
Well, I'm still going, and I kind
Yeah,
of I kind of feel like the wind is at my back. I think
yeah,
all for the right reasons, and
yeah,
um, yeah. So I'm gonna keep going.
yeah. We'll keep doing. Yeah, you're definitely anointed. I'm thankful. So,
Bless you. Thanks for the interview. Good to talk to you.
yep. Nice to meet you. See you
All
later.
right, you as well. All right, have a good one.
Yep. Yep. Bye.
Tell-
All right. Such a great conversation with Michael W. Smith. If you have not listened to the worship albums, for sure, go check that out. He's got Worship Forever that just recently came out. All orchestral, beautiful orchestral arrangements of these worship songs. Go listen to that if you have not listened to it. It's really, really beautiful. And then, of course, I would say if you have not watched his Dove performance of Place in This World, go to YouTube and find that. We should have just shown that on this. But, anyways, thanks, Michael. And thanks for joining us for this interview. And click the subscribe button to make sure you stay tuned for future interviews. See you later.